Yay Media Group.
I went upstairs and the casting director's assistant, I'm not going to blame the casting director on this. It was some assistant. She walks up to me and she says, I don't know what these producers are thinking. We had all of New York City's best talent last week.
Oh,
this is insane to me. That
there
this
are
is
cruel
real.
people in this business.
Hey dude, I think the 90s are calling.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Hey Dude, the 90s Called podcast. I am one of your co-hosts, David Lasher, and I'm here with my partner in nostalgia, Christine Taylor.
Hello, David.
Hey, we love you, Christine.
Yes.
What's up?
Yes. How are things?
Things are good. I don't know when this will drop. So, I mean, right now we're towards the second half of...
Yeah, end of summer. It feels like end of summer anyway. Even if this airs for real, like in late August, we're hitting August. In other words, that's so our listeners can know where we're at in time.
Yeah, I was telling Riley that I have this problem that like when I get into August, I realize that I future trip and I'm like, oh, the summer's over.
Yeah.
When in actuality, like we do have another month or more of summer. I gotta not worry about.
Yeah, you're still in the schedule too, where Chelsea's got it's like back to school in the way.
That we do, yes.
Ella's out of school. Quinn goes back end of August, but I also don't feel like I'm tied as much to that schedule, which is it's a new normal for me.
Yeah, that's true. The back to school is like this; it just hangs there.
That's always a future trip. I hated back to school. I hated it even as a kid.
Because it's back to the grind. It's back to getting her up and out and homework and tennis and activities. And
no, it's
not that I don't love it.
Yeah.
I do love it.
It is. It's the grind though. You're right.
I'll tell you, we saw Chelsea at camp for visiting day. I'll tell you the best thing about camp is Chelsea is up in the Adirondack Mountains on a lake, no phone, no social media, no electronics at all. And she is the happiest I've ever seen her.
Isn't that?
Just unplugged from everything here and school and friendship drama and just having the best pure joy of a time.
Yeah. It's like freedom. It's freedom from like any of those moments. And it's a running joke in my family when I don't have my phone on me and they'll see me just like totally disconnected looking for it. And it's like, cause it's like an appendage. I actually now I'm holding it, but my new place for it, if I don't have a pocket, is like under my arm like this. And literally it's like, Ben will come over and try to hug me. He's like, you don't want to hug me because you don't want to drop your phone.
It's like a third arm.
It's like a joke. It's the way we're so attached to this device. And I've had moments where I've left the house without the phone and realized it. And I have there's no turning back. And there is something so freeing in that day when you're like, oh, all right, well, everyone's going to have to live. I'm going about my day without my phone. It'll be fine.
Yeah, it would be a cool experiment to like consciously have a day a week or a day a month where you put the phone away. And you live life like it was in the 90s. Just no one can reach you.
Yeah, because when we were away in Hawaii and it was just Ben and my brother and I, and literally Ben was like, what if we do a day, like a phone-free day? And
how'd that go over?
Well, it didn't because I turned it down. I am so horrible. I was like, are you kidding? I have 2 kids across the country. There's no version where I'm not having my phone on me.
Oh,
I was like, if the kids were here, different story. But I need to have my ringer on. And maybe I should have leaned into that, Ben.
It's hard to give up.
Ben, I'm hearing you now.
Ben, you had a great idea, man.
Great idea that I
don't give up.
Completely shot down.
Do you want to introduce this amazing guest?
Well, you introduce her and we can both introduce her. Yeah.
I just remember being such a diehard fan of Northern Exposure. Not only would I look forward to the every week's episode, but I remember discussing it with friends of mine that were also almost like a cultish about the show.
Yeah, it was a show that was unlike any other show on TV.
Right.
So it was so fascinating to watch. I felt like it was the coolest show. It was so original. And it was
beautiful.
It was beautiful to look at. And it was like actors that we didn't really know or hadn't seen. It wasn't like people who had done tons of shows before. And so it was like getting to know these people. And it was the coolest. And I just remember thinking that must be someone's dream show. Like that's a dream kind of job because you get to be in this incredible environment. And also like, it's just the dialogue, the scenarios they do. There was almost like a magical element to it that I remember. Like they would go there.
It was like a dream. Like, oh my God, this actually, there's people in Alaska and they're brilliant and reciting, Walt Whitman. And,
philosophical. It was very philosophical.
Yeah.
That's what I remember. It was deep. It was deep.
Yeah. Janine has been around for a long time and has amazing stories. So let's welcome in the great Janine Turner. So you're not only blonde, you only want blonde dogs too.
Yeah, well, I have Palomino horses, Palomino dog. Well, thanks for having me on. This will be fun. Thank you both very much.
Yes, welcome. Thank you
so nice
much.
to meet you.
It is like, I feel like we know you. I mean, this is something that when we have guests on that we've not met before and we've watched over the years, it genuinely feels like, oh, that's so cool. I know her, but really don't. just because just because of all the work you did. So thank you so much. We had Rob on, I don't know, 6 months ago or something. And he told us so many great stories. And it's so cool to see that you guys are doing a podcast together.
Yes, and thank you. It's a thrill to be with both of you and all that you've accomplished and the things that we have in common of being young actors who not only were we sort of 90s, but we've done things since then, of course. But I mean, we both started young. I mean, I was 3 and 15 in New York City and things of that. So I really look forward to this. And yeah, Rob and I have our podcast, Northern Disclosure. My dog is all over me right now. If you wonder who's pushing me, it's like a seal, like
the nudge,
a
right?
dolphin.
The lab nudge,
yeah, the dolphin nudge.
The dolphin.
But yes, we have Northern Disclosure, which is super exciting for Northern Exposure, which is now streaming, and we're having a lot of fun.
Awesome.
Yeah, it's been so cool listening, not only rewatching some Northern, but to listen to you guys recapping it. It brings me back to the early 90s where I watched every episode. I remember that was when you had to wait every week for an episode. For our listeners, it used to be appointment TV. And that show, I was obsessed with it, as were, so many people. But
my gosh.
It brought me right back and how special that show was.
Well, that's how we've been feeling, not to toot our own horns. It really, we had a minuscule part of it. It was a collaborative effort. It was just sort of this, people talk about reboots, but I'm like, I'm not so sure. It was just this kind of miraculous little time where everything fit together, whether it was, with the writers or the cinematographers or the sound, the music, the sound, the Alaskan landscape and all the casting, all of it. And that we all were a certain age and we lived there together like an acting troupe in Seattle, Washington. And it was just this sort of little haven. But the show, I worked with Universal for 3 years to get it streamed. I cold called because I don't have like a CAA agent anymore. So I cold called Universal and I said, I literally looked up Google and said, who do I call?
No
here?
way. Oh my God.
Because I wanted to ask because Rob, when we had Rob on, he had told us it only had just started streaming on Amazon and there was a slew of new fans and just a resurgence of the show because of the streaming. So, oh my gosh, you cold called. How did you do it?
I cold called. I looked up because, when you don't have CAA or any of the biggies, say, can you connect me with Universal? I just found a distribution, in charge of Universal distribution. And I called and said, hey, I would really love for Northern Exposure to be streamed because we're losing the rising generations. No one really has CD players anymore. So what are we going to do? And he says, well, hang on. And he reached out to the man sort of in charge and came back and said, it's not going to happen because the music's too expensive and all that. And I said, well, may I have his name and number? And I emailed him, and for 3 years I worked with him. This one, Bill Verbanek, he was wonderful. He was a fan of the show. He was getting ready to retire. And I said, look, we've got to get this going. And they would go back and forth like, well, we can't do the music and people are going to be upset. And I even call with ideas like, well, on Broadway, this is how they license, a few minutes, and maybe we could do this, and maybe we could lose that song or not this song. So finally, after 3 years, they streamed it. So they told me if it had not been for you, we wouldn't be streaming it at all.
Oh,
and
my God.
I'm just glad that it's out there and that people can watch it again and that we have this kind of cool experience because it's just a meaningful show. It's just a non-judgmental universe, which we all need right now.
Oh, God, that is so perfectly said. Really perfectly said. To have, and something Rob also told us too when we had him on, was when you watch the show now, unlike a lot of shows in the 90s, it's not as dated looking as some of the shows that when we, because you guys are in such outback, sort of outdoor gear, the Land's End, the, very traditional, just sort of rugged, rustic wardrobe. So there aren't that many sort of like red flags other than the no cell phones and, where it feels very timeless.
Yeah.
Well, our producers worked very hard to make that happen. They didn't want anything trendy. A lot of stars wanted to come guest star and they said, no, this has to be a universe that's just unique. And you're in this little time capsule in this Alaskan town. And it wouldn't make sense if suddenly Bon Jovi arrived. You know what I mean? I guess it could, but it was just, I guess Bon Jovi could have been curious to visit Sicily, but they no cool sunglasses. They were very conscientious. And I think, and I've traveled to Alaska, if you step back into Alaska today, they would still be dressed like that. I mean, it's just the last frontier. And I think the reason it's so timeless really is because it embodies the American spirit, right?
Yeah.
It's a town in the Wild West, so to speak, in the last frontier. They don't care if you're Democrat, Republican, what you believe, how you want to live your life. It's just everyone has come together in this little town and they walk around. They show up. They're not on their phones. They're driving through the town. They all go to the Brick. They meet. They communicate with each other.
Yes, there's interaction.
And everyone knows each other. Everyone knows each other intimately in this town, right? That doesn't happen anymore.
Those town halls, because now, I've progressed in my knowledge of the Constitution, things of that nature. But the town halls are such an example of federalism where the little town of Sicily, they're going to take care of their own stuff, and how they accuse Fleischman of being a Trotskyite and they stand up and say, it's just so funny. But it was pretty profound and intellectual and it was quirky and it was fun. And as Rob always says, it really doesn't matter what you're looking for or from where you are in life, you can find your way to feel at home in that town of Sicily.
I remember watching it and thinking initially, oh my God, there's people in Alaska? Like people live there? And then not
year
only
round, it's not just a vacation destination or a tourist spot.
Not only do people live there, but they are as smart and intellectual and
deep,
profoundly knowledgeable as anyone I've ever met in a big city. And the landscape, I mean, the location was the real star of that show. I mean, like pre-Yellowstone, which, everyone's obsessed with Yellowstone. I feel like people needed northern exposure to see that, to get outdoors and see that incredible landscape and wildlife.
It was one of the first times I think that the cinematic aspect of television was about the landscape. It was just it was a character in itself. And we filmed it in Seattle, in Redmond, Washington, which is a kind of a suburb over the floating rivers in Seattle. But we traveled every week to Roslyn, Washington, into the Cascade Mountains. And we would travel sometimes through snow blindness and all kinds of things to get there. And that's where all the snow was and the beautiful landscape. And it was a character in the show. It really, really was.
Well, Janine, first of all, I want to hear the process of how you got the show, because David and I, before you came on, were looking at the shows that you guest starred on.
Yeah, our favorites.
Happy Days,
yeah.
Love Boat, and The A-Team and Knight Rider. It was like,
wait, Love Boat?
So
I
80s.
was on Love Boat too.
Oh my God.
Heavens to Betsy, you say. I was a preacher's wife.
Oh, that's so great. But, to go from sort of, guesting on all of these iconic shows with huge stars. I mean, like, the Henry Winklers and the Ron Howards and, and David Hasselhoff and, when did you tell us a little bit of your process of how you got Northern exposure and, and how long had you been doing all of these other, because your resume is just endless.
Oh, thank you. Well, it's a very long story, but I'll try to get, as you mentioned these, at Night Rider, I'd had a few dates with David Hasselhoff, by the way.
Okay, stop.
Whoa.
Years before time out.
Okay.
But I had, to back up a little bit,
Yeah.
I'm from Texas. I started modeling in Dallas at the age of 3.
Okay.
And I would do wild things like they had me walk up a ladder into an airplane's engine, right? The engine, and put my hands out in a little Martha miniature dress and pose. I was so scared. I was like, oh my God, I'm going to be sucked up into this engine.
I want to call Child Protective Services right now. Retroactive.
I want to find that photograph of my mother. I just moved my mother in with me. She's 88 now, so I'm taking care of my mom, And I'm like, if I could only find that photograph. But so I modeled from the age of 3 in Dallas. And then at 15, my mother and my dad, both, who knows, probably more my mother than my dad, said we should take your portfolio to Wilhelmina. And she was one of the top 3 modeling agencies at the time in New York City. We're talking 1978.
Okay. Yeah.
And I was 15, and Wilhelmina was still alive at the time. This beautiful, beautiful model she was Dutch, and she was smoking her cigarettes. And she said, "Look left, look right." And she goes, "Okay, we'll take you on, and you be back. When can you be back?" And I was 15. I said, my mother wasn't in the room, and I said, "In a month, I'll be back in a month." And I walked outside, and my mother, it was her idea, right? But she says, "We can't leave Texas." And I'm like, "Well, you brought me here.
Here.
I mean, I would never have known to do this." And I had to fudge because I really wasn't 5'7". So I was in New York at 15. I moved home for 1 year. I started doing all kinds of commercials. Everything was blossoming in New York, but my mom hated it. But my dad said to me, he was a pilot for Braniff International. He was a West Pointer, graduate of West Point. Back then it was Army Air Force. So he flew in the Air Force, one of the first to fly twice the speed of sound in the 60s. But then he was flying for Braniff International. But he said, "You're going to use all your money that you've earned as a child model, and you're going to pay for your own private school, professional children's school. You're going to pay for your own apartment in New York City as a 15-year-old. And when you run out of money, you're coming home."
Whoa.
So
You went to PCS?
I went to PCS. Did you?
No, but I was a New York actor young, and I had a lot of friends there. Who was there when you were there? Anyone that we know?
Oh my God. I don't know who was there when I was there. Cornelia Guest, I think was the one that was there when I was there.
Okay.
But I mean, Yo-Yo Ma, Scarlett Johansson, everyone sort of
Yeah, the Cosby
traveled
Kids.
through, which was sort of the professional homeschooling of the day. Really, because it was like, here's what you need to do, and you need to come in and touch base once a week and that type of thing. Nevertheless, I was in Hollywood by the age of 17. So I was discovered by Leonard Katzman on Dallas, and I was in the first episode back after JR, who shot JR.
No.
Yeah. Still one of the highest rated.
Yes. Oh my! I remember that summer. The whole world was waiting to see
everyone
who
was
shot
talking about that. It was the headlines of newspapers. Who shot JR? It was epic.
And I walked into the interview was with the casting director. It was in a hotel in Dallas. And I was downstairs in the little sort of getting some candy or something. And there was this man across the room, and he looked at me and winked at me, and I looked at him thinking, okay. And then I get upstairs, and it was the same man. It was Leonard Katzman, who was one of the producers on the show. And this is the only time this happened to me in my life, because after this, it was no. But he looked at me and said, "You don't have to read. You have the job." I'm like, "Oh, really?"
Oh, wow.
He goes, "I just saw you downstairs." So I was Charlene Tilton's friend. And next week, our August 8th through 10th, I'm doing I don't know when this airs, but I'm going to be doing a Dallas reunion. And that will be a lot of fun, because I did 3 episodes on Dallas. And he pulled me out of the pool and said, "You should go to Hollywood." So I'm like, okay. So I graduated a year early from high school and traveled out with my mother to Hollywood at 17.
Incredible. Christine, you got to get in on that Dallas reunion. Christine was on Dallas.
Yeah, no, but I just did a little tiny part in the final episode that
Well, I only did a tiny part for
Yeah.
three episodes, so I
But
think you should come
that's-
join us.
But it was so tiny. It was literally the final episode was like the flashback of like an It's a Wonderful Life sort of thing of what would have happened to JR if he had taken this, or Cliff Barnes was the character. I think I played Cliff Barnes's daughter. I'm trying to think of who the actor was. I'm blanking on his name, but it was sort of like, anyway, it was so cool because I was such a fan of that show. And I pictures
So
myself.
everybody,
It was the
Yes.
show.
Oh my
And
God.
to
And Joel
book
Grey was in that final episode.
Oh, wow.
Joel Grey
Was
was
he?
the sort of ghost, like the, it's a
Oh
one, you know what
my
I mean? The
gosh.
little,
Wow.
but yeah, that, but I can't even believe you had sort of, you were given this ultimatum essentially of like, here are the rules. Otherwise you're coming home, and look at how it happened. I mean, that's pretty crazy.
My mother taught me tenacity. And I was also at that time discovered sort of by Franco Zeffirelli, which, you know, Franco
Romeo
Zeffirelli,
and
right?
Juliet.
Yeah.
right?
Romeo and Juliet,
Yes.
Taming of the Shrew.
Yep.
And he was doing Endless Love, and he was doing a national search. And this is kind of a cool story for any actors out there, right? So I was in Dallas, and it was in the newspaper, and I was reading at the kitchen table. I wasn't in Dallas. I was in like Euless, Texas, Fort Worth. I was in Fort Worth, actually. And it said, Franco Zeffirelli is looking for his next, Olivia Hussey. And I said, oh, that's me. I need to be that person. So at Dallas, I met with the casting director. I believe her name was Sally Dennison, for the role of Endless Love. And she said, no, you're not right. Well, I know a lot of this training came from my mom, right? But at the time, this sort of not really cool manager in Hollywood named John LaRocca, was looking for stars from the Kim Dawson Dallas agency. And he said, come to LA and I'll make you a star. And I said, well, I'll go to LA, but I want to meet Franco Zeffirelli. And so I didn't take no from Sally Dennison, right? So I flew out to LA and met with this producer for Endless Love, and he kept his head down the whole time. We all know those auditions, right? He just like looked down, didn't really look at me, didn't really care. He was like, no. So then I dated Robert Urich's nephew to go to the prom. You remember Robert Urich?
Yes.
Of course.
Okay. And so Robert Urich's nephew, Mark Rauch, had introduced me to Robert's agent, Merritt Blake. And he was in New York at the time, he was actually out of LA, but somehow New York. And he said, go to New York. And I said, well, I'll go to New York, but I want to meet Franco Zeffirelli. I was only 17, right?
You were not taking no for an answer.
Yeah. But this is what it takes. And there's a great John Schlesinger quote that I cut out and carried in my purse forever about he did what? Urban Cowboy? John Schlesinger, I think. It wasn't
Midnight Cowboy.
Midnight Cowboy.
Yeah.
That's it. Thank you. And he said, you have to remain tremendously strong about what you know you can do and never, never take no for an answer. So now I'm in New York and I meet with Julie Hughes and Barry Moss. And I walk in the room and I said, I really want to meet Franco Zeffirelli. And I do the audition and they said, hang on 1 minute. Right. And they walked to the door and there's like this trap door. They opened the door. They said, follow us. And I go in there and guess who's in there?
Stop.
Franco Zeffirelli.
You manifested this. You made it happen.
Wow.
That's so cool.
Yeah. And I did the audition and halfway through, I was 17. I forgot my lines. So I did this like look at the camera where I'm trying, you're thinking, you're trying to remember your lines. And so after I finished, he looked at me and he said, where have you been? And I became his choice. I was his choice. So I did 2 film screen tests on the lot after that. And they would say, you remember that moment when you looked at the camera? We want to replicate that. And of course, it's when I'd forgotten my lines, you know what I mean? But I didn't tell him that. But what happened was Peter Guber, who became a good friend of mine later on, Peter Guber and John Peters wanted Brooke Shields and Franco Zeffirelli wanted me. And so, but then the final culprit to my mother's, credit is they gave my mother a sheet saying your daughter has to do nudity. And my mom said no.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, right. And Brooke did do nudity.
Yeah. Well,
right?
I don't know if she did it in that, but they, Peter Guber and John Peter wanted her and it just became sort of the thing. But I think the moral of the story is that it's like you can't give up before the miracle. right? It's like you hear no and no thousands and thousands of times, even though I worked and I had all this work and I have so many stories from George Papard to, David Hasselhoff. And I was engaged to Alec Baldwin, so let's not forget that.
Oh,
yeah. Whoa, we got it.
Hold the phone.
That always blows people's minds. Hi, Alec.
Wait, how did you meet Alec?
I met Alec at an audition for Cutter to Houston.
Okay, was he? Because he was on Knots Landing, I believe, right?
No, this was before then. So he had just come off some soap opera in New York, and I was off General Hospital. So technically, I was on the cooler General Hospital. Demi Moore and I were sisters on General Hospital.
Exactly. You were on, General Hospital at that time was
the biggest.
So hot. It was,
and I didn't want to be on it. I hid myself in the bathroom and said, "No, I'm not going to do it," because I wanted to be Nastasha Kinski,
of course,
eating strawberries in the movies, right? Because I didn't want to be on a soap opera. But I took it, and after that was over, I walked into this audition for Cutter to Houston. I saw Alec across the room, and he looked at me, and I looked at him, and there was just this sort of thing. And we went into the audition, and we auditioned. I didn't get the role. And later, I said, "Well, why didn't I get the role?" And they said, "Because Alec was just too flustered around you." You know what I mean?
Oh my God!
I'm like, "Oh well, okay." But yeah, we started dating, and after he stood me up 3 times before he finally showed up, he found me somehow through my agent. I don't even know how.
Oh my God!
And then he didn't show up for the first 3 dates. And my mother was living with me at the time in Los Angeles because she was going through the 3rd divorce. My mother and father married each other and divorced each other 3 times. Right.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. But they married each other at the end. So they were married when my father passed. So yeah, The Way We Were. Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf. Does that say it all?
Yes.
That's kind of beautiful though, to keep coming back together.
Yeah. But my mother said, "I think he's going to arrive and I think he's going to be in a sports car." And he was in this little blue Carmen Ghia, I think. So yeah, we fell in love and got engaged, and it just we had the wedding. I have the wedding invitation on my refrigerator, and I'm thinking about posting it on my Instagram. Janine Turner, by the way,
you actually made wedding invitations?
Oh, we had the wedding invitation, the dress, the bridesmaid dresses. We were a month out, and
what happened?
I remember. Well, it was just we were young.
Yeah.
We were young. We had a lot of unresolved cycles and patterns, I think is the best way to put it. And I was raised in obviously a kind of turbulent household. And I remember standing next to him in Westwood, California, on a little incline on the other side from UCLA. I said, we can't do this. He's like, "What will people think?" I'm like, "It doesn't matter." So it was like a month out. But, he and I still talk, and we're still friends. And now he's got all those kids.
I know. He's got 6 kids at his age.
18 million kids.
Wow. That's amazing. So wait, you were what, in your early 20s at that point?
I was 21.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah,
That's baby.
21.
Oh my gosh.
It was very traumatic. It was one of my traumas that I can check off in my life because I loved him dearly. And afterwards he and I kept in touch a lot of years after that. But yeah. So,
Oh my gosh.
And General Hospital with Demi Moore. So you didn't want to do it, but did it turn out to be a good experience?
Well, yes and no. I mean, on the pro side, it was great experience. I mean, by the way, David Jacobs from Dallas gave me my first job when I arrived in Hollywood. I look back now and see how amazing that was. The minute I arrived in Hollywood, David Jacobs, who created Dallas, gave me my first series behind the screen with Mel Ferrer, who was married to Audrey Hepburn, and Joanne Linville. And I was this young starlet, and we did 13 episodes, and it aired opposite Johnny Carson.
Oh,
they were trying to create a soap opera opposite Johnny Carson. So obviously it didn't last, but based off that, I booked General Hospital. And I think that the thing about General Hospital is they would come down. They were all upstairs, the producers and the directors, and so they would speak to you like God.
Right,
Janine, move a little bit to the left, and they would come down and say, "Okay, here's a completely new 2 new paragraphs I want you to do. All right, and by the time I get upstairs, we're going to say action." So you're like, "Oh, okay." So you can't. And Demi Moore and I were such great friends. I was at her wedding with Bruce Willis, and we were really close. So, but the con was that I had long blonde hair because they wanted me to bleach my hair, and I had to look like Laura Spencer. because she was
the Luke
exiting
and
the
Laura.
show.
Of Luke and Laura.
Yep.
Yeah.
She left the show, The Fog, and I walked in through the fog. And then I was hypnotized by David Gray. So all I said for a big portion of the show was, I don't know. I don't know. I just don't know. And someone sent me a button in the mail fan that said, I don't know. I don't know. I just don't know, because I was hypnotized. So in that respect, it took me a lot of years to for people to take me seriously as an actress.
Right.
So what you choose to take, and that's why I held out all those years before No Other Exposure. Finally, after all those A-Teams and Night Riders and Love Boats, where I was just really pretty much kidnapped, I said to myself, there has to be more than this. And I'm watching Alec get all these incredible roles. Right?
Oh, right.
Attorneys. Yeah. And they're having me show up in bathing suits. And I'll never forget, I showed up and this man was smoking his cigar, right? Leaning back in his chair. I'm in a bikini. Okay. I'm like 22 or something. 20. He said, do a 360. And so I did a 360 and he took a puff and he said, if only you'd lose 5 pounds.
Oh my God.
This is a theme, by the way, of this podcast with a lot of our guests. Not a real theme, but it comes up. And, I've had my story of that as well. We had Kristen Davis on when she was on Melrose Place. She has a story. I mean, it's that period of time, 80s, 90s.
Yeah,
I mean, it was
now,
without even a question they would ask you, without even unapologetically. It was like, if you want the job.
Rude. But you had to show up to audition. Christine, did you ever have to wear a bathing suit to an audition or a meeting?
I think maybe for commercials, there might have been like, oh, you're going to be on a beach and you have to come in a bathing suit. But I don't remember that kind of moment.
Mm-hmm. And I look back now, like on my Instagram is this picture of Scott Baio. And I was just doing a Comic-Con type of thing in Tennessee. And someone brought that photo to me. And there on my waist is this big and I have all this long brown hair. And I said, this is not fair to bring a 62-year-old woman. You know what I mean?
The memories of
what I look like?
The way things were.
before the middle age spread, like, oh my God.
You should be proud.
Youth. Oh, wow. Okay. So all of those and you making the real commitment to saying there's got to be more than just being the kidnapped, the damsel in distress, the pretty girl, the whatever. And did you go seeking? Did you make that choice to say, listen, I'm not doing those anymore, and let's look at, let's all audition for the meatier things for something that really speaks to me?
I did. I did make that choice. What happened was I was 23 and I was so distraught. I don't want to do this anymore if I'm just going to be
objectified, right?
And all the objectified. And I did work. I did some pilots here and there, and I can look back. It's not like I didn't work, but it wasn't anything substantial. So I met with these managers and they said, look, we've looked at your work and we really think it'd be great. I don't even remember their names, right? If you just moved to New York City and started to do, and I noticed that all the big roles, all the good roles, they were booking actors out of New York, right? It's like the New York actors.
They were taken more seriously.
Yeah, they were.
Yeah.
So I looked at them and I said, okay, well, I'll do that. And my agents in Los Angeles, who had an office in New York, they said, if you move to New York, we're firing you. And I said, well, I'm moving to New York. So I was 23 and moved to New York. I cut my hair. I didn't cut my hair off right away, but I wanted it to be Jessica Lange,
Oh yeah.
She always has that emotion going on. And so I called her coach when I got to New York City and she said, let me check with my guru. I'll get back to you. I'm like, well, I don't know what that means. I mean, I'd already been in acting classes with Scientology, right? A lot of us, Patrick Swayze, Alec, a lot of big stars were in this Beverly Hills Playhouse. Milton Casales, we were in these.
I remember him.
Yes. Remember him? And they were Scientologists. And if you wanted to leave, they said, well, do you have a note from your doctor? And why don't you look up and try to think positively before you say you have a headache? I'm like, okay.
So you want to take some Advil. Yes.
Yeah, right. It's just like, you can't leave without a note. I'm like, who from? From whom should I get this note?
These acting coaches, man. And this one said she needs to consult with her guru.
And I'm like, But I did get Marsha Hoffrecht's name. And Marsha Hoffrecht had been a member of the Actors Studio, and she was there when Marilyn Monroe was there, and Dustin Hoffman, Robert De Niro, Paul Newman, and she was all about the craft. It was all about sensory work. Method actors get a bum rap, but so you have to say sort of sensory, but it was about sensing things. And I had private lessons with her, and then I joined her acting troupe, and then I cut my hair off, and I said no to a lot of work because I just thought if I can't have substantial character with that's indicative of what, say, Alex getting, why should I bother? And then my story before Northern Exposure is pretty wild. I had $8 left to my name, but I'll pause and let y'all talk before I tell that story.
Well, I see Steel Magnolias here on your resume, and to go from feeling objectified to, I mean, arguably one of the most incredible female casts of all time. How did that happen?
Well, that happened during this time when I was trying to not be objectified. And there I am in a Marilyn Monroe sort of dress as Miss Merry Christmas. But I mean, it was a great cast, a great director. I believe it was Herbert Ross, right? I think it was Herbert Ross.
I don't
remember, but the cast was unbelievable.
I had met him for Pennies from Heaven years earlier when I was 17 because I was a ballerina. And that was a kind of a really cool movie that Steve Martin did.
Right.
With, Bernadette
Peters. Yes.
But so they said, they just offered that role to me. And how could I turn it down? I mean, it was Shirley MacLaine, and Julie and I became friends. And what was interesting is I did Miss Merry Christmas, and it's like these one-liners. In Dallas, my mother remembers, we'll see if this is really true. My line with Charlene Tilton was, I said, I haven't met your boyfriend. And Charlene Tilton's character, Lucy, said, no, and you won't. And then in Dallas, there was an in Penny's, Steel Magnolias, there was an actor's strike, and they wanted to give me a line, but there were no, writers. So they threw a line to me and they said, tell Julia Roberts this line. And the line was, and I think it's still in the movie. Pretty sure it was in the movie. I walked up to her and said, your boyfriend's one well-hung man.
No way.
I think it is still in the movie. Yes, because that stayed with me. That is,
if you're going to have.
But like through that Southern smile, right? That's what I love so much about that movie. And it's just the smiling through those lines that the ladies would say. They're so Southern, so genius. Oh, that's brilliant.
So I have quite the lines. But I did do that movie because it was such an exceptional cast, and it was really fun to be a part of it. But when I saw the movie, something clicked inside of me, and I said, something has to change. Right? I can't go through life just saying one line in these movies. I need to be the star in these things. And so I find I think Dustin Hoffman say once, acting careers are a series of breaks. And I think life in general is a series of light bulbs that go off, where you sort of make this agreement with yourself, where you say, I'm not going to do that anymore. I mean, that was cool. And so I held out, and it's kind of a cool story about Northern Exposure, but I'm not going to go into it until y'all ask me.
We're ready.
We're ready. $8 in your pocket. Let's hear it.
Yeah, let's go. We're ready. We're strapped in.
Okay. Well, I had said no to so many things. They were calling me to do this series of that. And I'm no, if it's not going to be, I'm not doing it. And I provided for myself with commercials. Rob and I both. I did Tegrin shampoos, Scope. I mean, you name it. Commercials were my bread and butter. And then all of a sudden I became oversaturated in the market with commercials.
Oh, like your face, you had done too many, that it was like they know that face and she's associated with that. So we have to go a different way. Okay.
And of course I was paying for my own. I've been independent financially since I was 15. Right. So I was paying for all my bills in my apartment, and I've been auditioning for everything. Well, and so suddenly this role arrived where I would portray an attorney, and I said, yes. And it was with Tom Selleck producing and Stanley Tucci.
Oh.
And I had starred in a movie with Stanley Tucci a little bit earlier, Monkey Shines, and which I loved because I could like smoke cigarettes and have kind of a character. It was kind of
like George Romero. That movie was. I have to rewatch that because I'm such a horror movie person. But I saw that on your resume. I was like, I need to go back and watch that. So many good actors in that movie, and I need to see it. But
and the ambulance. I starred in the ambulance with Eric Roberts, where they took my organs out, and I had to like cry and sob. I remember the director looking down and saying, no, you can do it better than that. And I'm like, okay.
I mean, All right. So Stanley Tucci,
so back
who
to
you
the
had
story.
already
So
worked
Stanley
with.
Tucci and they do the deals. You both know this, right? Before you go out, even though you don't have the role, they say, if you get the role, you're going to get all this tens of thousands of millions, all this money.
Yeah, right.
And so I flew out to LA. I was in New York, met with Universal Studios, and I was a method actress, of course. So I go to the bathroom before my audition because I was not a good auditioner. And this was for the Tom Selleck pilot. And I lie down on the floor to do my ahs. Are you familiar with any of this at all, technique-wise?
From acting class.
Right. So I'm going, throw it all away. And this woman walks in the bathroom and she sees me lying on the bathroom floor. And she steps over me, goes to the restroom, washes her hands and steps back over me. I'm just lying on the floor. At Universal Studios, the Universal Tower, the Black Tower, because I had to meet Universal before I met NBC. I walk into the room. She was one of the executives.
Oh my God.
And so I do the audition and I pass. So I pass for Universal. Now I have to go meet NBC. And it was Peter Tortorici. No, I think he was at CBS. I forget what his name was, but he was
Brandon Tartikoff, probably.
Yes, thank you very much.
Yeah.
So it was Brandon Tartikoff, and I audition. I don't get the role. So I fly home. I'm in tears. I'm sobbing. I'm ready to quit. I had broken up with my boyfriend at the time because he had a baby with another woman. And I was just sort of beside myself, but I couldn't think about going home yet. But I remember collapsing behind the stairs. And Demi had introduced me to her agent. Now she's flying high with this big movie career, right? Mm-hmm. And the agent said, we don't want to represent you. And I said, well, why not? And I said, what about if I send you some more tape? And he says, it wouldn't help.
Oh.
So I fell down behind this sort of Tinker Toy couch in my Tinker Toy apartment in New York City. And I heard, for those of us that believe in God, all right, I heard an intuition that said, don't let anybody put out your flame. Right.
Wow.
Yeah. So I was morbidly depressed. They called me for a soap opera. I said, I can't possibly do a soap opera. I can't. I started in a soap opera. This would be, but I'm walking around the streets like a Dostoevsky novel, like Crime and Punishment, right? Like, dear God, is like, what is happening? And I just wanted to be a serious actress and fine. And there was this message about letting go and God's will. I'm like, I'm going to let go. Okay, whatever. So I show up for this audition for the soap opera, and the girl had to open her shirt in the audition. And I said, I'm not opening my shirt for the audition. I'm just not. And I walk backstage and I look up for the girl who auditioned after me, and guess what she did?
Opened her shirt.
I'm like, well, I'm not getting this role. And I didn't. So now I can't even book a soap opera, right? I'm 27 years old. I'd started as a 50. And I was incredibly depressed. I didn't think I could ever leave my apartment again. My sister-in-law came and helped me. God bless her. But I got this call for Northern Exposure. And I said, I can't do it. I can't. And I've been showing up to auditions since I was 3. I said, I can't.
You just felt too dejected. You just felt like it was like you'd reached bottom.
Yes.
Right. Oh,
the phrase, it's always darkest before the dawn, is just ringing in my head right now.
Mm-hmm. That and don't give up for the miracle. I really think, right? It's sort of like what, and Woody Allen saying 80% of success is showing up. You just have to show up. So I rolled out of bed, showed up. My sister-in-law was with me. It was on Park Avenue. I went upstairs and the casting director's assistant, I'm not going to blame the casting director on this. It was some assistant. She walks up to me and she says, I don't know what these producers are thinking. We had all of New York City's best talent last week.
Oh,
this is insane to me. That
there
is
are
real.
cruel people in this business for sure. You need to have thick skin.
Yeah. So I get to the door, and for the first time in my life since I was 3, I balk like trying to get a horse in a trailer because I live on a ranch, right? Like I can't go in. There was I can't go in. And my sister-in-law said, I'll go in with you. She walked in with me. I do the audition for Northern Exposure. I walk out. I cry all the way down Park Avenue. Like, I'm just a terrible actress. I'm just going to have to give up. I get the call that now I have to go to CBS, right? I have to get on a plane, make the deal, fly back out to CBS, and I'm dry heaving over the toilet. Like, I can't do it. I can't do it. And I get on an airplane with my sister-in-law. I fly out there, and I'm in this long skirt back to the feeling like you're always too fat, right? And I look back, I was so thin. I had this long skirt because I didn't want to wear jeans because I thought I looked heavy in jeans.
Gosh.
And I walk in and I do the audition with Rob, and Joshua Brand walks out shaking his sides, which are like papers of, he goes, why did you wear a skirt? Why did you wear a skirt? And I'm like, oh God. And he said, they think you're too pretty to be a pilot. And I thought, wait a minute. Okay. What does looking pretty have anything to do with your capability to be
your
a
skill
pilot?
Set, right?
Oh. Yeah. So I walked in and I took the chair when they asked me to go back in. I took a chair and I turned it around and I straddled it like a cowboy and just did this whole audition again. And I got it. I booked the role.
Wow.
I mean, it was everything I had been hoping for. She killed her own deer and chopped her own wood and lived in Alaska and flew her own plane. And she was this incredibly diverse. It was everything I'd been hoping for.
And by the way, I'm sure you've looked at it a million times, as we all have, with things that when there's a job you have your heart set on and you don't get it and you think it's the end, the Stanley Tucci, that pilot that you thought you were going to get, like what would have happened? You know what I mean? Like just the sliding doors of the fact that you would not have had this opportunity. And I mean, that is incredible to me, that you got yourself out of that sort of dark hole, that trap door that you were caught behind. And something about you just kept, and your sister-in-law, it sounds like, was also like a godsend to be able to just get you through the door of these, get you on a plane.
You brought her into the room.
And I'd never done that before in my life.
I've never seen an actor do that, but you need what you need,
And that Stanley Tucci pilot was never picked up.
I was going to say, because I never heard of that.
Yeah, never saw the light of day.
That one.
And then Brandon Tartikoff sent me a letter years ago saying, I'm sorry that I didn't believe in you and I should have believed in you.
Oh, you know what?
How often does that happen?
He was a classy man. Yeah.
Yeah, he was.
Oh,
I thought, who does that? Nobody. So, anyway, I think that we still have ups and downs through life in different decades of our lives and I have to keep reminding myself. I've written a musical about Belva Lockwood and the byline is "Don't give up for the miracle." Because I just think that that's really the message, isn't it? It's just keep showing up.
Keep showing up and believing in yourself. Yeah. I mean, you should write a book.
I guess I should.
Because you throw out little things like, I went back, my boyfriend had a baby with someone else. And you gloss over these things that, like, you've had a very amazing life.
Yeah, incredible. And to get the reward of a show like we talked about at the very beginning, something that special where you got to play what you knew, you got to play somebody you knew you were deep down inside, even if it didn't look the part of Hollywood. You got to play a capable, strong, self-assured, smart. I mean, all of the things that you didn't get to do for how many years? Almost 15 years of full-time acting. And
it was the culmination.
Being the pretty girl, right?
But the romance, I call it the Sam and Diane formula.
Will they, won't they?
Yeah, will they, won't they? You guys carried that on so well and it played out over so long that, Fleischman was just, clearly in love with you from the beginning. Did you guys, I don't remember, did you guys ever get together? Did your characters?
We did. And actually what our producer says, they thought it was like a Hepburn Tracy.
Yes.
It was
that's
sort of,
that's the original. That's
right.
The
An
idea,
intellectual match.
Yeah. Hepburn Tracy. So, and the dialogue was so rich. It was never stuff or or cursing. And they would quote Walt Whitman or Freud or Jung. It was just incredibly intellectual. And the dialogue was, "You're the most vile, odious, pernicious waste of corpuscles I've ever had the misfortune to lay my eyes on."
Oh my God.
that is impeccable. That is delicious to say.
It is.
Right?
And like, why are you even born, Fleischman? A fly has more utilitarian value than you do. I mean, it was just like the dialogue was
so good.
And we could go back and play. One week I was all dolled up in Amelia Earhart, or the next one I was in an igloo as a Native American sort of a flashback dream sequence with my hair long, and I'm speaking actual native tongue of the Eskimos, Sikamiglu, which means, do you want some ice? And she chips the ice off the igloo, All kinds of fun things.
How is your relation? I mean, I know we got to hear Rob's side of, because Rob had also had a pretty similar story of just obviously not playing the pretty girl, but of really in the trenches as a working actor in New York. I didn't realize you both had auditioned out of New York. Which is so interesting. But how he talked about, and he talked a lot about, he gave us just the fun story of his point of view of like when he saw you at the audition and that it got down to the two of you. And it's amazing when those memories and that place too, where that Rob described it so vividly. That David, I know you've been there before. I was there in that basement of that hallway in that theater, like just how cold the whole experience is. And then when you get that role and you know that it's yours and that it was meant to be all along. Because the two of you it felt so effortless, and it just felt like the chemistry was there from episode 1, from the pilot. Did you guys have a lot of rehearsal beforehand, or was it like just jumping in and at the races?
We had a read through, and that we all remember that read through because John Corbett and Darren Burroughs and John Cullum. I'd worked with John Cullum once in Quantum Leap, and Barry It was just this cast, we were looking around, and Joshua Brand, John Falsey said, we're thinking about having a moose go through the opening credits. I mean, because we were a summer series, we could do anything we wanted and nobody cared. If we had been a regular series, people would say, you can't talk about Freud, you can't talk about Jung, you can't quote Walt Whitman, you can't play Ella Fitzgerald, you can't play classical opera music. What are you doing?
Right. It's not commercial enough. It's not commercial enough, right? But
and
to
they
have
proved,
a summer, man, that's good.
They proved that it could be done. So we didn't have a lot of rehearsal, and Rob and I, we just had a natural chemistry. We always have. We sort of have this still to this day, a connection with each other where we respect and kind of love and care for one another, and then also we'll butt heads. We'll be like because But what I loved about Rob is that the passion that he brought to the role equaled mine. We both wanted it to be good and to push the envelope and to make it the best we could. And we were intellectually and emotionally and characterally, we're driven by our characters. We wanted it to be the best it could be. And that's not always the case, as y'all know, right?
No. And you felt like equals. That's the thing too. It wasn't in the hierarchy of like the characters. You were both in these powerful positions where you could go at each other in that way. And it just worked. And it's so terrific when you get a partner, a scene partner, a partner in crime to get to like play with that when you both care as much. So cool.
And we did, because we've all worked with actors that really don't. I mean, they kind of phone it in, or they're thinking about how it's going to be cut, and they're manipulating when you're off camera. I mean, when they're off camera,
come in and just say it the same way every time, like they've
or the motivation is to let's get out of here. Season 3 on a show, a lot of actors are like, "What time am I wrapped?
Yeah,
I'm not in the
Yeah, I have a date. I've got tickets to the Lakers game or whatever, right? Yeah, absolutely.
So true. Well, I think actors, we're creative people. And when we're in a series, at first I never wanted to do a series because it was such a long-term commitment. But I certainly became willing by the time Northern Exposure came around, which I think is maybe God's message.
You were ready and you appreciated it.
Be willing. But we're creative people. We're always writing, doing, wanting to test. And I think one of the cool things about Northern Exposure, there was until the end, but especially when Joshua Brand was there for the first 4 seasons, there was always a creative aspect to it. Oh, what am I going to be this week? Am I going to be speaking Russian this week? What's going to be happening? But I think to answer the question about Rob and our dialogue, the great thing about a series is you have some episodes to find the character.
Yes.
If you're in a movie or a movie that you don't have that time. And around the third episode, they called me and said, look, Joshua Brand called me. He said, look, you already have the chemistry. You're already sexually attracted. There's already an attraction between the two of you. Don't play it.
Oh, wow.
Play against it.
Yeah.
You can play against it. And he would say, we give you lines that if someone were to read those lines, like you're the most vile, odious, pernicious waste of corpuscles I've ever had the misfortune to lay my eyes on. People would say, that's too rude. You can't possibly do that. But it was the way that there was that organic chemistry that we could put that aside. And that was really great advice. It was really, really great advice.
Yeah. And
we did get together, David, to answer your question, but then I forgot it. I was so traumatized. Maggie O'Connell forgot that they'd had sex. They'd finally done it. So I forgot it.
Oh my God. Yeah, it was clear that the characters were in love with each other, and you can protest too much about how much you hate each other, but the audience knew.
That's true.
You're talking about testing yourself. The movie Cliffhanger, I remember when I saw the trailer in the movie theater, and it was like, the first time I thought, how in the world did they shoot this movie? Mm-hmm. You guys hanging off the side of a mountain and the stunts. What was that experience like? Because I love that movie.
Well, and I love that trailer because it was to classical music, and I think it was to Mozart.
Yeah. Yes, I remember being blown away.
Yeah. And I was like, oh, that's so cool. The classical music against, maybe it wasn't, I think it was Mozart. I don't know. But, I thought they said, do you hike? I said, sure.
Who doesn't?
I'm a rancher. My dad had cows and horses. I hike. Yeah. And then I get up there, we're at 15,000 feet, ice. I was so bruised when I literally, I have an amazing story. You want another story? I mean,
yes.
Yes.
We love stories.
Okay. We were filming Sicily, which is a really big episode for Northern Exposure, and they won a Peabody for that. It was the season finale. And then I booked Cliffhanger. Well, Cliffhanger wanted me, say, on that Monday, and Northern Exposure said, we won't let you out. We need you to the following Wednesday. Oh. And Cliffhanger said, if you're not here by that Monday, you can't have the role. Oh. And so I kept talking to the directors and the ADs saying, look, can't you rearrange the schedule a little bit? Just rearrange the schedule a little bit. And they said, nope, because they were scared that we would become big stars anyway. We would demand more money. There was always this kind of
What
thing.
Season was this?
This was, I think, the third season.
Okay.
And I think the end of the third season.
Okay.
And so we would have been picked up for 50 episodes, 50. That never happens. And that's when I said, I want a pickup truck. I want a horse. I want a ranch. I can go home to Texas now. I have 50 episodes. So they weren't going to let me out. And my agent was like, well, I guess you can't go do it. You can't do it. And I said, wait, what? They can't let me out. So I called the executive at Universal Studios. Once again,
I love this. There's a pattern here.
Yes.
This is amazing.
I called the executive at Universal Studios. I said, wait, what's this I hear that they're not going to let me out? He goes, let me call. So he calls me back. He said, no, they can't let you out. I'm like, why not? It's going to cost too much to reboard, which means reschedule. Mm-hmm. And I said, well, how much? He said, let me call you back. So he hangs up, calls me back. He says, it's going to cost $75,000 to reboard it. So you know what I said?
You didn't pay it.
I said, I'll pay it.
Oh no.
I said, I'll give, because I was only making $100,000 on the movie. Okay. But it wasn't about the money I was making on the movie. It was about the experience to work with Sylvester Stallone and to be in the Alps and this whole
John Lithgow.
John Lithgow. Yes. It was just this movie. I said, I'll pay it. And he said, you'll what? I said, I'll pay it. He was like, you'll what? I said, I'll pay it. Because I called him on their bluff.
Yes.
Right.
I said,
hell yeah.
You want $75,000? I'll give you $75,000. He said, I'll call you right back. He hung up the phone. He called me back, and I was sitting in my trailer in 19th century costume for another exposure. He calls me back and he says, "You're out."
Oh my God!
And
I can just imagine.
And you didn't have to pay it. You called the bluff. Is what
this guy running into Josh Brand's office, going, "She said she'll pay it." He's like, "I just let her out.
Just forgot.
I'm out of excuses."
I mean,
Incredible.
and also, I get it, but like, wouldn't you think you'd want to keep your stars of the show happy? I know it doesn't work that way. I get it.
And as your fame and your work rises into feature films, it only helps Northern exposure, right?
They were creative and geniuses, and I'll always be so grateful for Joshua Brand believing in me for this role, and I always thank him. But they were very careful. They wanted to keep us in our box,
of course.
And it was hard to book any sort of job because when you did 22 episodes, you only had about 2 months off in the summertime.
Right.
So the fact that you could book, So y'all
Janine,
are awesome. Your work is awesome. It's a real pleasure to meet with both of you and the careers that both of you have had.
Thank you.
We're so glad you didn't leave before the miracle.
Yeah.
So everybody is. And I got so many lessons from this conversation.
Yeah.
So thank you.
I don't know about y'all, but I'm an old timer now. I get on the set, I'm 62. I'm like, let me tell you about the days we had film. And we had to check the gate in China, and there was a piece of rice stuck to the film.
I know. It is a very humbling experience to now be on sets because most of the people, like in my case of things lately, are young writer directors, these little indie things I feel like grandma instead of like, let me tell you about the 90s. They're like, the 90s were so cool. It makes me laugh so much, and I love it.
Who's that?
I know, really. Oh, this was just so much fun, Janine.
Yeah,
Thank you
terrific.
so
Congratulations
much.
Congratulations on your hit podcast and all the work that you've done.
You too. Northern Disclosure. We love it.
Thank you for having me on the show today.
Oh, this was awesome. And give Rob our love. Send Rob our love.
Hopefully people will be inspired. Isn't that, I kind of feel the goal of life now is how can we inspire people to say, just whether you're fighting cancer, you're going through a divorce or a breakup or whatever it is, it's just don't give up for the miracle. If we're still here, there's a reason and a purpose that we're here. So just don't give up.
Yes, this was an inspiring conversation. Thank you so much, Janine.
All right. Y'all take care.
Thank you.
Take care.
What a great interview.
I love actors. What incredible lives and incredible strength so many of them have. Like, you remember when Mark Feuerstein told us how he called up Les Moonves because they wouldn't let him out for West Wing? Like,
exactly.
My God.
Exactly.
Yeah, Janine would have lost Cliffhanger had she not called their bluff and stood up to all these.
I know.
It's just amazing.
She used that word. Her mom taught her tenacity. And I feel like that is like that word. We say it with our kids of like grit, but I feel like I'm always blown away. And we've talked about it with a lot of guests who turn down work when they've realized that they've sort of burnt out on playing one particular kind of role or turning down things you're getting offered or even really good audition opportunities when you've done something over and over and over and over again. And she had done that sort of ad nauseum. It felt like of the guest star role on whatever sitcom or TV show, hit TV show, and to really make that conscious decision to leave her team, to move to New York, leave LA, and take herself seriously, give herself a fighting chance going into an acting program and the method acting style and really like giving herself and wow, did it pay off. I'm blown away by those stories because the easier road is to just say yes because it may not, you know what I mean? But she had such self-belief and tenacity. So great lesson for our listeners who, when they ask us of like, what's a good way to get into things and how do I do it? It's just wait for the miracle, right? That's our...
Yeah, but also like never give up belief in yourself and constantly busting through doors. However you have to do it, whether it's meeting Franco Zeffirelli, man, she ended up in a room with him,
really willed that to happen.
Yeah. I just love that conversation. But
that was great.
Thank you everybody for listening. You can follow us at Hey Dude, the 90s Called. Please subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. You can watch us on YouTube, and please share this episode with anyone you think might want to go back to the 90s with us. And we will see you all next week.
Bye.